She thought you would chase forever because for a long time, your behavior quietly taught her that you might. Maybe you were always the one fixing the silence, always the one sending the next message, always the one explaining your feelings, always the one trying to keep the connection alive when her efforts started becoming weaker than yours. And at first, you probably called it love, patience, loyalty, or emotional honesty. But somewhere along the way, your kindness became too available. Your attention became too predictable. Your presence became something she could pause, ignore, return to, and still find exactly where she left it. That is when the dynamic changed against you. Not because you were not valuable, but because you were giving your value without limits. The painful truth is that some people do not understand your presence until they experience your absence. They do not feel the weight of your effort while you are still carrying everything. They do not notice how much emotional comfort you bring until you stop rushing in to make things easy. They do not realize how much power they had over your reactions until you stop reacting. And that is exactly why silence becomes powerful when it comes from self-respect. Not the silence of anger, not the silence of revenge, not the silence of a man pretending he does not care while secretly checking his phone every few minutes. Real silence is different. Real silence is the moment you stop chasing a person who became comfortable giving you less. When you become silent in the right way, you do not beg her to understand your value. You let the space speak. You stop filling the gaps. You stop rescuing the connection from her lack of effort. You stop rewarding distance with more attention. Suddenly, she feels something unfamiliar. The man who used to move closer when she pulled away is no longer moving. The man who used to ask what happened is no longer asking. The man who used to make her silence feel safe is now letting her sit inside it alone. That is when the emotional dynamic shifts. In this video, you are going to learn why your silence changes everything. Why chasing makes her comfortable with losing respect. Why pulling back calmly creates mystery. And why your absence can become the mirror she never expected. Because the moment she realizes you are not waiting anymore, she does not just feel your silence. She starts questioning the version of you she thought she controlled. Before we start, a quick reminder. The real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood. A private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month, you join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits. Just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community. Enroll once, grow forever. Let's dive in. Section number 1. Stop rewarding the distance that was hurting you. The first reason your silence changes the dynamic is because it stops rewarding the distance that was hurting you. Most men do not notice how they train a woman to treat them until the pattern becomes painful. She pulls away, and he moves closer. She replies coldly, and he becomes warmer. She ignores him, and he sends more effort. She gives confusion, and he offers clarity. She becomes inconsistent, and he tries to prove he is still loyal. At first, this feels like love. It feels like patience. It feels like being the mature one. But over time, it teaches a dangerous lesson. She can lower her effort, and you will increase yours. She can create distance, and you will carry the connection. She can make you feel uncertain, and you will still remain emotionally available. That is why your silence becomes powerful. It interrupts the reward. It tells the pattern without anger, I am no longer feeding this. You do not need to accuse her. You do not need to send a long message explaining how much she hurt you. You do not need to make dramatic announcements about walking away. You simply stop giving your full energy to someone who is giving you half of hers. And when that happens, she feels the shift immediately, even if she pretends not to. The comfort she was receiving from your constant effort is no longer there. The emotional safety of knowing you would always chase starts disappearing. The dynamic that once made you predictable break. This is not about punishing her. It is about protecting the part of you that kept trying to earn respect from someone who was becoming too comfortable with your availability. A man loses power when he keeps giving more to a situation that gives him less. He starts looking like he is asking to be chosen instead of deciding what kind of energy deserves access to him. But when he becomes silent, not from bitterness, but from self-respect, he stops looking like a man begging for balance and starts becoming a man who creates balance by removing himself from imbalance. And that is the moment she starts to feel the consequence, not because you attacked her, but because you stopped cushioning her behavior with your effort. Your silence becomes the first time she has to face the distance she created without you rushing to close it. She thought you would chase forever because you always did. But when you stop rewarding the same distance that was draining you, she begins to understand that your attention was never guaranteed. It was a privilege she became too relaxed with. Section number 2. Let her feel the silence she created. The second reason your silence changes the dynamic is because it lets her feel the silence she created. This is important because many men keep saving a woman from the natural effect of her own distance. She becomes cold, but he keeps bringing warmth. She becomes quiet, but he keeps starting conversations. She becomes unsure, but he keeps giving certainty. She creates emotional space, but he keeps running into that space with attention, jokes, questions, apologies, and explanations. Without realizing it, he removes the consequence from her behavior. He makes her distance comfortable because she never has to sit inside it alone. But when you stop chasing, the silence becomes hers to feel. Not in a cruel way, not in a dramatic way, but in a real way. If she stopped replying, you stop filling the gap. If she became inconsistent, you stop trying to stabilize the connection by yourself. If she pulled away, you stop running behind her with emotional proof. And suddenly, the same distance she created starts feeling different. Before, her silence was powerful because it made you move. Now, her silence has no immediate reward. It does not pull a reaction. It does not pull panic. It does not pull a long paragraph. It just sits there, empty, quiet, and unanswered by your desperation. That emptiness creates reflection. When someone is used to your effort, they often do not notice it while it is present. They notice it when it is missing. She may not say anything at first. She may act like she does not care. She may even test the silence longer to see if you break. But inside the dynamic, something has already changed. The old version of you would have rescued the connection from becoming too quiet. This version does not. The old version would have asked, "Are we okay?" This version lets her ask herself why your energy is no longer chasing hers. That shift is powerful because it makes her confront the absence of the man she assumed would always reach first. And here is the key. Your silence only works if it stays calm. If you go silent but post bitter quotes, watch her every move, or return angry when she finally speaks, then your silence was not self-respect. It was emotional pressure. Real silence is cleaner. It says, "I am not fighting you, but I am no longer fighting for a connection alone." That message is felt more deeply than words because it does not beg to be understood. When she finally feels the silence she created, she also feels the value of the effort she lost. And that is when the dynamic begins to move in your favor, because you are no longer the man trying to escape her distance. You are the man who allowed her distance to reveal what she truly wants. Section number 3. Become unpredictable by becoming centered. The third reason your silence changes the dynamic is because it makes you unpredictable in the only way that actually matters. Not unpredictable like a man who plays games, disappears randomly, or tries to confuse her on purpose. That kind of unpredictability is childish, and deep down, women can feel when it comes from insecurity. The powerful kind of unpredictability happens when you become centered. She expected you to chase because that was the old pattern. She expected you to explain because that was what you used to do. She expected you to break the silence because your emotions once moved faster than your standards. But when you stay calm, when you stop rushing toward her distance, when you stop trying to control the situation with more effort, you become a different man in her mind. This shift is powerful because people build emotional expectations around your behavior. If you always text first after tension, she expects it. If you always apologize just to restore peace, even when you did nothing wrong, she expects it. If you always keep the conversation alive, she expects it. And once your reaction becomes expected, it loses mystery. She no longer wonders what you will do because she already knows. She no longer feels the weight of your attention because it arrives responding from the old pattern. The certainty disappears. She starts wondering what changed. She starts questioning whether you are still emotionally available in the same way. She starts feeling that your attention may not be as guaranteed as she believed. But this only works when your silence comes from real inner control. If you are silent on the outside but panicking on the inside, your energy will eventually betray you. You will send something impulsive. You will come back too strongly. You will turn cold in a way that looks wounded. You will try to make her notice that you are not noticing her. That destroys the effect. The goal is not to perform indifference. The goal is to become so grounded in your own life that her distance no longer shakes your identity. A centered man does not ask, "How do I make her miss me?" before he asks, "Why did I abandon myself when she pulled away?" That question changes everything. It moves you from reaction to reflection. It makes you realize that the real dynamic was never only about her behavior. It was also about your willingness to keep rewarding it. So, when your silence comes from centeredness, she feels a man who is no longer emotionally easy to predict. He may care, but he will not chase imbalance. He may miss her, but he will not lose himself. He may be open to connection, but not at the cost of his peace. That is the kind of silence that changes the dynamic because it does not beg her to respect you. It shows her that you finally do. Section number 4. Stop carrying the connection alone. The fourth reason your silence changes the dynamic is because it stops you from carrying the connection alone. This is one of the quietest ways men lose power without realizing it. They become the emotional engine of the entire interaction. They start the conversations, they fix the tension, they ask the questions, they create the excitement, they explain the misunderstandings, they make the effort, and they keep hoping that one day she will suddenly match the energy. But when one person keeps carrying everything, the other person can become comfortable being passive. She does not need to step forward because you keep stepping forward for both of you. She does not need to wonder where you are because you keep showing up. She does not need to invest deeply because your investment is already holding the whole thing together. This is why silence becomes a test of the connection's real strength. When you stop pushing, you finally see whether anything comes toward you. When you stop initiating, you finally see whether she has desire or only comfort. When you stop repairing every cold moment, you finally see whether she values peace with you or only enjoys being chased by you. Many men are afraid of this test because deep down, they already know the answer might hurt. They would rather keep forcing the connection than discover that without their effort, nothing moves. But a man with self-respect prefers painful clarity over comfortable illusion. Your silence removes the fake momentum. It stops the relationship from looking alive only because you are constantly feeding it. And once you stop feeding it alone, the truth begins to appear. If she values you, she will feel the absence and start meeting you with effort. She may reach out, ask questions, soften her tone, or show more consistency. But if she only liked your attention, she may disappear, become colder, or return only when she needs validation. Either way, your silence gives you information that chasing could never give you. And this is where the dynamic changes deeply. You are no longer trying to convince her to participate. You are giving her space to reveal whether she wants to participate. That is a very different energy. One is pressure. The other is observation. One says, "Please care about this." The other says, "I will see what your actions show." Women can feel that shift. A man who observes calmly becomes harder to control than a man who keeps pleading emotionally. So stop carrying the connection alone. Let the weight become shared, or let it fall. If it falls the moment you stop holding it, then it was never balanced to begin with. And if she finally steps forward when you stop doing all the emotional work, then your silence did what your chasing never could. It gave her the chance to feel the value of the effort she had been receiving for free. Section number 5. Let your absence become the mirror. The fifth reason your silence changes the dynamic is because your absence becomes the mirror she did not expect. When you were chasing, she could focus on your reaction instead of her behavior. She could say you were too emotional, too intense, too available, too needy, or too serious. She could avoid looking at the part she played because your over-effort gave her something else to judge. But when you stop chasing calmly, when you stop explaining, when you stop filling the empty space with pressure, there is nothing loud left for her to blame. Your silence removes the distraction. Now, the only thing left in the room is the pattern she created and the absence of the man who used to soften it. This is why silence can be more powerful than confrontation. A confrontation gives her something to defend against. She can argue, deny, justify, or turn the conversation around. But calm absence does not attack her, so it becomes harder to fight. It simply reflects reality. If she gave little effort, she now feels little access. If she created distance, she now lives inside distance. If she treated your attention like something ordinary, she now feels what ordinary days are like without it. That is the mirror. It does not insult her. It does not beg her. It does not chase her. It just shows her that every behavior creates a result. And this is where many women begin to rethink, not because you forced them to, but because your energy changed the environment. She may remember how easy it was to talk to you. She may notice that nobody else responds with the same warmth, patience, or steadiness. She may realize that your presence was giving her more emotional comfort than she admitted. She may even start checking whether you are still watching, still reacting, still available. But your job is not to turn that into excitement too quickly. Your job is to stay steady because the mirror only works when you do not rush back into the old role. A man who understands this does not use absence as a weapon. He uses it as truth. He does not disappear to make her feel worthless. He steps back because his presence should not be used to protect someone from the consequences of their own inconsistency. That is why your silence feels different when it is clean. It does not say, "I hate you." It says, "I am no longer carrying what you refuse to respect." And sometimes that mirror becomes the moment she finally sees you clearly. Not as the man who would chase forever, but as the man whose absence made her understand what his presence was really worth. Section number 6. Make her wonder without trying to make her jealous. The sixth reason your silence changes the dynamic is because it makes her wonder, but only when you do not ruin it by trying too hard. This is where many men make a dangerous mistake. They finally stop chasing. They finally create space. And then they immediately start performing. They post stories with other women. They write indirect quotes. They act overly happy online. They try to show that they are busy, wanted, unbothered, and impossible to replace. But when a man tries too hard to look unaffected, he often proves the opposite. His performance becomes louder than his silence, and instead of making her feel his value, he makes her feel his wound. Real mystery is not created by showing off. Real mystery is created by emotional control. When you become quiet without bitterness, active without announcement, and unavailable without drama, she begins to wonder naturally. She wonders why you are not reacting the way you used to. She wonders why your energy feels calmer. She wonders why your absence does not look like revenge. She wonders whether you finally saw something that made you step back for good. That kind of wondering is powerful because it does not come from jealousy. It comes from uncertainty. And uncertainty has a way of making people revisit what they once took for granted. But remember, the goal is not to make her jealous. Jealousy can create a reaction, but it does not always create respect. A jealous woman may come back to protect her ego, not because she truly values you. She may return to see if she still has control, not because she suddenly understands your worth. That is why a high-value man does not build his power on making her feel threatened. He builds it on making her feel the absence of his attention, the quietness of his peace, and the difference between a man who used to chase and a man who now chooses himself. So, keep your life real. Go out because you actually want to live, not because you want her to watch. Improve yourself because you respect your future, not because you want to punish her past behavior. Talk to people, work, train, grow, laugh, and move forward without turning every action into a message for her. The moment your life stops being a performance, your silence becomes believable. And that is what makes her wonder deeply. Not seeing you pretend to be fine, but sensing that you might actually be fine. Not watching you chase attention elsewhere, but realizing your attention has quietly left her world. That is when the dynamic changes, because she expected your silence to be a trick. Instead, she feels that it might be your new standard. Section number 7. Let her return to a man who no longer needs the chase. The seventh reason your silence changes the dynamic is because if she returns, she does not return to the same man who used to chase. This is the final test of your transformation. Many men create silence for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, and then the moment she comes back with one small message, they collapse back into the old version of themselves. She says, "Hey," and suddenly, all the discipline disappears. They reply too fast, explain too much, become too warm, and act like her return is the victory they were waiting for. But that reaction exposes the truth. They were not silent because they had changed. They were silent because they were waiting to be chosen again. And when she feels that, the old dynamic returns immediately. If your silence is going to change anything, it must change you first. She should feel that the man she returned to has a different rhythm now. Not colder, not hateful, not arrogant, but calmer, more selective, and harder to pull into emotional imbalance. The old you may have chased every sign. The new you observes patterns. The old you may have accepted small attention as proof of hope. The new you looks for consistency. The old you may have opened the door fully the moment she knocked. The new you opens it slowly and watches whether she enters with respect. This is where you must understand something powerful. Her return is not the reward. Her changed behavior is the reward. A message does not mean she values you. A sudden call does not mean she understands what she lost. A little warmth after distance does not erase the pattern that made you step back. So when she returns, you do not need to punish her, but you do need to remain grounded. You can be polite, you can be calm, you can even be warm if the energy feels respectful, but you do not hand her full access to your attention just because she appeared again. Let her feel that the chase has ended. Let her feel that your peace is no longer on the table for emotional games. Let her feel that you can care without becoming controlled. This is the kind of masculine calm that changes everything, because it tells her without a speech that your silence was not an act, it was a shift in identity. At the end, the truth is simple. She thought you would chase forever because your old behavior made it easy to believe. You were there when she was distant. You gave more when she gave less. You tried harder when she became colder. You explained when she ignored. You repaired when she created the damage. And slowly, without even noticing it, you became the man carrying the whole connection, while she became comfortable watching you carry it. But the moment your silence became real, the dynamic changed. Not because you became cruel, not because you stopped caring, not because you wanted revenge. It changed because you finally stopped rewarding the behavior that was draining your self-respect. Your silence became powerful because it removed the old pattern. It stopped giving emotional payment to inconsistency. It let her feel the silence she created. It made her experience the space that you used to fill with effort, warmth, attention, and patience. And that space teaches something words rarely can. A long paragraph can be argued with. A complaint can be dismissed. An emotional reaction can be blamed. But calm silence is different. It does not beg to be understood. It simply changes the reality. It says, I am no longer fighting alone for something that should be shared. This is why you must never confuse silence with weakness. Silence is only weak when it comes from fear, ego, or hidden waiting. But silence becomes powerful when it comes from standards. When you are not trying to punish her, your silence becomes clean. When you are not trying to make her jealous, your silence becomes mysterious. When you are not waiting desperately for her return, your silence becomes believable. And when your life keeps moving without her approval, your silence becomes the moment she realizes you were not as controllable as she thought. But remember, the real victory is not making her come back. The real victory is becoming the man who does not need to chase to feel chosen. Because if she returns and you collapse, nothing changed. If she returns and you forget your standards, the old dynamic comes back. If she returns and you reward the same energy too quickly, she learns that your silence was only a temporary performance. That is why the man you become during the silence matters more than the silence itself. Your absence must create growth in you, not just anxiety in her. So, when she pulls away, let her. When she becomes cold, stay calm. When she expects you to run after her, stand still. Not with bitterness, but with dignity. Let your silence become the mirror. Let your absence reveal the truth. Let her show whether she misses your attention or truly respects your presence. Because there is a huge difference between a woman who returns because she lost control and a woman who returns because she finally understands your value. And if she never returns, you still win. Because silence did what chasing never could. It gave you your power back. It showed you that the connection was either strong enough to meet you halfway or weak enough to disappear when you stopped carrying it alone. Either way, you are no longer the man waiting outside someone's attention, hoping to be invited back in. She thought you would chase forever, but your silence changed the dynamic because it proved something deeper than words. You can care, you can miss her, you can remember what you had, but you will never again abandon yourself just to keep someone close. Remember, knowledge means nothing without action. If you're ready to rise above emotion and lead with purpose, join the community today at the link below. Enroll once, grow forever.